About a year back we built a gravity roller treadmill, which is right here in front of me, and we made a few changes to it, and several people have asked how we built it, and we're going to make some more changes to it. So what we're going to do is take it apart step by step and show you how we built it and give you dimensions and parts, and show you how we put the whole thing together basically in reverse. But before we do that, Jason's going to just demonstrate it again quickly, and you're going to hear how loud and noisy this thing is. So we're not adjusting the volume, this is my normal speaking voice, and you'll hear how noisy this thing gets. Well, as you could hear there, that makes quite a racket. So one of the changes we're going to try and make is put on a rubberized belt to reduce the noise. We're also going to try put on rollerblade inline skate wheels, and so those are going to be changes we'll make later, which will be an upcoming video, but for now we're just going to show you what we did to build this thing to begin with. So what you have is a belt made of wooden slats. The commercial ones use these. So these are actual dimensions, 2.5 inches wide. It is just over 1/2 inch thick. And we bought these at Home Depot. It was pretty cheap pine timber, and we used a belt that we bought on eBay, and these are over under looped, as you can see. So one goes over the other one and then goes under the next one, so it's 2 lines on each side, to make a kind of a plank bridge effect. As you can see, they run on EMT tubes that are on bearings that roll and spin. One of our the first one we made was just the pipes without the whole belt. So we're going to take the belt apart. These are just stapled on, and you can see how I'm just unlooping that. So that's our end join, and the whole belt can come off. The other thing we did is put wheels at the ends, just to help it roll. Now a lot of the commercial ones, instead of using staples on the belts, they use bolts going through. Now, when we first tried it, we used about 2 feet of pipe, and we used bearings that fit exactly inside. So this pipe is actually just less than 2 feet. We had it about 23 inches and about 1/4. Now, when I first cut it, I used a bandsaw, a portable bandsaw, and trying to get all the lengths exactly right and getting the cuts to be exactly smooth in 90 degrees was very difficult to do. What I found worked much better is a pipe cutter, because you can measure it very precisely and you get very good clean cuts.
Should we first demonstrate what it's like to run on this without the belt again?
Oh sure, yeah, you can. If you want to hop on barefoot again, I'm not going to be doing the running on this one, so let me just move this around. This is kind of painful in my feet. As you can see, they spin pretty well.
That hurts without shoes on.
Yeah, it does. That's why we added the belt. The other thing you'll notice if you look up close over here is against the side I have a thrust bearing. A thrust bearing with a fender washer. A thrust bearing stops the pipe jamming against the side of the wood and binding. So it helps the pipe to spin smoothly. As you can see there. Without those thrust bearings, the pipe would jam against the side.
I've got flip-flops on this time. I can actually at least walk on
flip-flops.
it.
That's a little. That's a little less noisy, but it's still fairly noisy.
Just for reference, that felt about a 10 on a regular electric treadmill. 10 miles an hour speed.
Okay, so the first time we made this, we didn't use these thrust bearings. So we just had the roller bearing that fits inside the pipe there, and on a bolt. And what we found is these pipes would jam against the side and dig into the wood, and it would jam up a little bit. So what we did is added a thrust bearing, that's the first bearing there, and a fender washer. So the pipe sits against the fender washer on the roller bearing. So this roller bearing can spin. The fender washer sits against the thrust bearing, and that allows that to turn. So if the pipe is tight against that, you can see that thrust bearing turning here. So this is a fender washer. It's got that inner ring with the little ball bearings that turn. Then it's got two outer rings with a groove that the ball bearings sit inside, so they can slide around like that. And the bolt obviously goes through the middle there. So that works a lot better than without the thrust bearing. The thrust bearing number we got was 51100. I'll get a quick measurement on the size there. The size we used was a 10mm inner size. Outer size was 24mm. Because we used it with a fender washer, as long as your fender washer is going to be larger than your normal bearing, and we had smaller washers between because you don't want the fender washer to jam against the outer edge, because the inside has to turn independently of this outer edge. So we have fender washer, a small washer, we have the thrust bearing first, then a small washer, then we have the larger fender washer, another small washer, then we have the 6000 washer, another smaller one on the outside so that can turn, and then the bolt head. So that's the assembly, and then just a nut on the outside. So that's how that whole thing goes together. So now we're going to take this apart and just show you the insides. The hard part is to get all the pipes lined up at the same time. And having slightly different dense pipes makes it a little tricky as well. Okay, that one's loose. take these off wood. You can also see I put some glue on the ends of the nuts just to stop those from coming loose, because this creates a lot of vibration, and with the vibration you have and the spinning causes nuts to come loose from the bolts. Now if you take a look on the inside there, you can see this one is loose, so you can see how these are put together. So you have a bolt head.
It is not focusing.
Just take it back a little. So what you have inside each pipe is a bolt with a washer, and this is slightly loose, and then you have a regular bearing, and then you have a fender washer with the smaller washers in between, so they don't grab against the edge. So this can spin freely. And then you've got the thrust bearing, you've got the fender washer, and then the thrust bearing on the inside. So that pipe sits very comfortably against the fender washer, and you can see how the thrust bearing spins. And this bearing lets the pipe spin very freely. And then it's, as I showed you earlier, it's glued on the outside, so this can actually turn, but it's mainly the bearing itself that will be doing the spinning. So when you cut the pipes with a pipe cutter, you get a very nice neat edge, and you can get them all exactly the right height. So if you do a pipe treadmill, a basic one like this, use a pipe cutter. A bandsaw or angle grinder will be a real pain, a real headache to try to get all the pipes the right length. For the height, what I did is a gradual increase in height. So let's get some measurements. These bearings, the outside dimension is 1.02 inches, so about an inch. In millimeter terms, that's 25.9 millimeters. So that's the outer size. The inner size was for an M10 bolt. I think these were M10s, which is a 10 millimeter size. So these are the bearings we used. This is a part number 6000, I think it is. Looks like 6002 RS. So internal size in millimeters, this is showing 9.99. So that's a 10 millimeter inside diameter, and a 25.9, 26 millimeter, which fits very nicely with the inside of a 1 inch. This is a 1 inch EMT, electric metallic tubing. It's a standard size, so this thrust bearing fits almost exactly in there, but you do get that slight rattle, metal on metal, so you get that's where you get all that noise from. So a couple of things we're going to try is to, it fits so nicely in there, it's getting stuck. Okay, to try reduce the noise is to use inline skate wheels on the bearings, and maybe take out the pipes. We're going to try remove the pipes and just use inline skate wheels, which will be larger. One idea is to offset them, so you'd have one there and one there, and then the next one, because they're going to be quite a bit larger wheel diameter. Okay, so the gradual incline, what I did spacing wise, center to center, was 2 inches on the pipes, and then I would gradually increment the height. So it doesn't just add on, say, 1/4 of an inch. It goes maybe 1/8 of an inch, and then the next one might be 1/4 of an inch, and then 3/16, and then 1/2 an inch as you go up. So just as it's kind of difficult. I didn't write down my measurements. So let's say the bottom ones are about 2 inches to center. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pipes across, where we're at about 2.5 inches up. So we gained about 1/2 an inch over 6 pipes. 1, 2, 3. Let's see there. There we started going more of a steeper slope, so about 3.25 of an inch. 1, 2. So from there, another few pipes across, we're up to about 3.75 of an inch. From the bottom, next one was 4 and so about 4 3/8. So you can see it gets incrementally steeper. It's not a constant rise. So 2 over from there, we're going 5 and 5.5. Next one is 6.5. So there to there jumped an inch. We're over here, we're only jumping maybe 1/4 of an inch from one pipe to the next, and then 7.5, almost 7.5 up to there. So you can probably see the curve. Little increments gradually getting steeper and steeper. The idea is the faster you run, the higher you're going up, the more the gravity is going to pull you down on these higher ones. So the timber we used, this is just pine. This is a 1.5, so it's a 2. If you're in the US, it's a 2 inch, which really comes at 1.5 inches. The width is 12, so it comes to just over 11 in actual size. And our total length here is 6 feet. We bought a 12-foot piece, which we just cut in half. And I think we had about 30 pipes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 30 pipes in this, and we just used 2x4s for cross pieces, which we adjusted a little bit for the thrust bearings as we added those in. So that's pretty much our third attempt, because the first one was just the poles without the thrust bearings, and the pipes would jam against the sides and bind. Then we added the thrust bearings, so that was a lot better. And then we added the rope belt. What we're going to try next is bolting through, and we want to run a rubberized belt on the inside where it's going to go across the wheels. Hopefully that will reduce the noise. We also may reuse the pipes and glue the thrust bearing to the inside of the pipe so they don't rattle against each other. Hopefully that will reduce the noise as well. So that's about all we have for now. We'll need to see if we can find some inline skate wheels that fit these bearings, so we can reuse these with the thrust bearings. Oh, one more thing is these we just got off eBay. They're just cartwheels. That's about a 5-inch diameter. I can't even remember what these cost or what they were called, but yeah, you're just looking for 5-inch diameter. On one end we spot welded them so that they wouldn't spin. That was the front end. The back ones could spin. It doesn't bother it because the belt's coming over the back end. On the front end, we spot welded there and there, and we also put these pieces of PVC pipe just to, because our spot welds weren't very good, that's just to stop them from turning, because the belt is getting pulled over these, and as it pulls it was trying to turn the wheels and it would just jam up. So if you do wheels with a belt like that, you'd want something just to make it rigid, stop the wheel from turning. So that's all we have for now. If you want to see more of these videos, like and subscribe, and we'll keep them coming.